This is the exact instant when Iran shattered every boundary that once existed between caution and confrontation. At precisely 11:47 in the evening, Eastern Standard Time on Monday, the 9th of March, 2026, the freshly appointed Supreme Leader of the Islamic Republic, Moshtaba Khamenei, stood before cameras and delivered a 12-minute declaration that was simultaneously pushed across every single Iranian government media platform, every aligned proxy communication network stretching from the streets of Beirut all the way through the heart of Baghdad, and transmitted with surgical precision directly into the hands of American diplomats at the State Department through a confidential Swiss intermediary channel. Have you ever witnessed a moment where the entire trajectory of global power shifts in a single broadcast? Because that is exactly what unfolded last night. If you could somehow peer through the walls of the emergency gathering taking place at this very moment, deep inside the White House Situation Room, you would observe Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and a constantly rotating assembly of senior military commanders who have remained locked within that secure facility for the past 6 consecutive hours. The absolute silence emanating from that building speaks volumes louder than any press conference ever could. No media briefing has been scheduled, no official statement has been released, no social media post from the commander in chief, absolutely nothing at all. As of 6 o'clock in the morning on Tuesday, March 10th, 2026, the government of the United States of America has issued precisely zero public responses to what Iran's newly appointed supreme leader just proclaimed to the entire world. The president himself, already struggling to manage a rapidly collapsing stock market, facing mounting diplomatic pressure from European partners demanding an end to hostilities, and carrying the weight of 7 American service members killed in action over just 10 days, has now been handed an ultimatum that makes every single previous crisis of his administration look entirely manageable by comparison. In this comprehensive deep dive, we are going to present to you the precise transcript of what Khamenei actually stated during his first direct warning to America. We will reveal the 3 specific demands he articulated that have never before been disclosed to the general public. We will thoroughly explain why the Chinese government issued an official statement within just 90 minutes expressing full support for Iran's strategic position. And we will systematically break down the internal Pentagon documents that were leaked earlier this morning, documents which show that military leadership genuinely believes this war cannot be won without launching a full ground invasion that Congress will absolutely never authorize. Iran is not merely resisting American pressure anymore. They are actively dictating terms to the United States for the first time in modern history. This newly appointed supreme leader is fundamentally reshaping how regional powers can challenge global superpowers. Before we dive any deeper into this critical analysis, hit that subscribe button immediately and make sure you turn on all notifications. What unfolds over the next 72 hours will ultimately determine whether this becomes the single greatest foreign policy humiliation in American history, or whether this administration somehow discovers an exit strategy that does not carry the unmistakable appearance of surrender. You absolutely need to be present when the White House finally breaks its deafening silence and responds. Subscribe right now. Let me walk you through the complete setup of exactly how we arrived at this precise moment in history. 11 days ago, the United States military and Israeli Defense Forces jointly launched what they officially designated as Operation Epic Fury. The strategic plan was designed to completely obliterate Iran's nuclear weapons program, surgically decapitate its senior leadership structure, and forcefully impose regime change within approximately 1 week. President Trump personally announced this military operation to the American people. He made solemn promises that Iran would be brought completely to its knees, that Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei would be permanently eliminated from power, and that a brand new government friendly to Western strategic interests would naturally emerge from the chaos. The operation was supposed to be swift in execution, decisive in outcome, and absolutely final in its consequences. The cost was never supposed to be measured in precious American lives lost or in widespread economic chaos spreading across global markets. It was supposed to be a clean, surgical military operation that would powerfully demonstrate American military dominance to every watching nation and end Iran's nuclear ambitions forever. But here is the brutal truth that nobody in Washington wants to acknowledge publicly. The entire gamble was constructed upon a fundamentally false assumption. The administration foolishly assumed that killing Ali Khamenei would instantly create a dangerous power vacuum. They confidently assumed that competing political factions would immediately begin fighting amongst themselves for control. They assumed the Iranian civilian population would enthusiastically welcome regime change with open arms. They assumed catastrophically wrong on every single count. Within mere hours of Ali Khamenei's death being confirmed, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps had already reached their decisive conclusion. They installed his son Moshtaba as the new supreme leader before the dust and debris had even settled across the streets of Tehran. There was absolutely no power struggle whatsoever. There was no political vacuum to exploit. There was only a remarkably smooth, military-backed transition of authority to a leader who is considerably younger, significantly more radical in his ideology, and far more willing to escalate confrontation than his father ever demonstrated throughout his entire tenure. The carefully constructed plan that was supposed to culminate in decisive American victory has instead produced a cascading crisis that is spiraling rapidly in directions that the White House strategic planners never adequately prepared for. At exactly 11:47 in the evening last night, everything fundamentally changed once again. Moshtaba Khamenei addressed the Iranian people for 12 continuous minutes. But make absolutely no mistake about his intended audience. He was not actually speaking to the Iranian people at all. Every single carefully chosen word was aimed directly and deliberately at Washington, D.C. and the American political establishment. For the first 6 minutes of his address, he methodically recited a comprehensive list of what he characterized as American crimes against the Iranian nation: the assassination of his beloved father, the targeted killing of Iranian nuclear scientists over many years, the crushing decades of economic sanctions designed to strangle Iranian prosperity, the unwavering support for Israel regardless of its actions, the occupation of Arab lands by American military forces stationed throughout the region. It was standard rhetorical positioning that observers had heard countless times before. Then, at precisely the 7-minute mark, his entire tone shifted dramatically. He completely stopped talking about historical grievances and the painful past and started talking with chilling specificity about what comes next in the immediate future. He systematically laid out 3 concrete demands that have sent shockwaves through every intelligence agency in the Western world. The complete and unredacted text of these demands was officially transmitted to the State Department through Swiss diplomatic intermediaries. Most major news networks reported that Iran called for American withdrawal from the Middle East region. That reporting is technically accurate, but substantially incomplete in its scope. What those networks completely failed to report is the extraordinarily specific language that Khamenei deliberately employed and the exact timeline he attached to each demand. Demand number 1 stated clearly that all American military forces must begin complete withdrawal from Iraq, Syria, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Saudi Arabia within exactly 30 days. Not eventually, at some undetermined future date. Not after lengthy negotiations have concluded, within 30 calendar days from the moment of his speech. Demand number 2 stated that the United States must comprehensively lift every single sanction that has been imposed on Iran since the year 1979, including all banking restrictions that have crippled Iranian commerce, all oil export limitations that have strangled Iranian revenue, and all technology transfer bans that have hindered Iranian development within 60 calendar days. Demand number 3 stated that the United States must pay substantial reparations to the Iranian nation for what Khamenei specifically characterized as the economic war that has cost Iran well over $800 billion in lost revenue over the past 4 decades of hostility. He set the reparations figure at $500 billion to be paid systematically over a 10-year period. Then came the portion of his address that has thrown the Pentagon into absolute crisis mode. Khamenei stated with unmistakable clarity that if these 3 demands are not satisfactorily met, Iran will immediately take 3 specific responsive actions. Action number 1 declared that Iran will completely close the Strait of Hormuz to all commercial shipping traffic, effective immediately upon the expiration of the 30-day deadline. Action number 2 declared that Iran will fully activate what he specifically termed defensive military partnerships with both Russia and China, including the very real possibility of establishing foreign military bases permanently on Iranian sovereign soil. Action number 3 declared that Iran will exercise what he called its legitimate right under established international law to develop and deploy a full-spectrum nuclear deterrent capability. Notice very carefully what he actually said. He did not merely state that Iran would pursue a nuclear weapon through continued development. He stated explicitly that Iran would deploy one. That precise choice of language matters enormously because it strongly suggests they already possess one. While Khamenei was delivering this historic first direct warning to America, something else extremely significant was simultaneously happening. Chinese state media released an official government statement at exactly 1:15 in the morning Eastern Time, precisely 90 minutes after Khamenei finished speaking. The carefully worded statement declared that China fully recognizes Iran's legitimate security concerns and completely supports Iran's sovereign right to defend itself against foreign aggression. Russia issued a remarkably similar statement of support approximately 40 minutes later. Both major powers deliberately used diplomatic language that essentially endorsed Iran's strategic position entirely. At precisely the same time, oil futures markets opened across Asian trading floors. Within just 3 hours of trading activity, crude oil prices jumped another 18% higher. Brent crude is now trading at $121 per barrel. The S&P 500 futures contracts dropped a devastating 4% before emergency circuit breakers halted all trading activity. Gold prices spiked dramatically to their highest level in recorded history. Bitcoin collapsed by 22% as frightened investors fled desperately toward traditional safe haven assets. At 4:30 in the morning Eastern Time, someone positioned inside the Pentagon deliberately leaked a classified strategic assessment to reporters at the Washington Post. The document is officially marked top secret and dated March 9th. The assessment concludes that the current military campaign has achieved only tactical success, but has completely failed to achieve any meaningful strategic objective. It states that achieving total military victory would require a ground invasion force of at least 200,000 American troops sustained over 18 months at a cost of $3 trillion and an estimated 15,000 American casualties. The conclusion formally recommends that the administration seek a negotiated settlement within the next 2 weeks. That document was written before Khamenei made his demands public. The Pentagon already knew this war was completely unwinnable. According to multiple leaks from sources inside the National Security Council, an emergency meeting took place at 1:00 in the morning. The participants included the President, the Vice President, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General C.Q. Brown. The singular topic was deceptively simple. How do we respond without appearing like we are surrendering and without starting a war we cannot win? Secretary Rubio argued for immediate rejection of Iran's demands, combined with massive escalation of airstrikes. Secretary Hegseth pushed back hard, pointing to the leaked Pentagon assessment. National Security Advisor Waltz raised the China problem. If the United States rejects negotiations and China openly backs Iran, the entire strategic balance shifts permanently. General Brown made the situation worse. He told the room that if Iran closes the Strait of Hormuz, the United States has only two options: accept it or go to war to reopen it. Going to war means striking Iranian coastal defenses, hitting Russian-made S-400 missile systems, risking Russian casualties, and potentially direct confrontation with a nuclear power. The president asked one question: can we win this without putting American boots on the ground in Iran? General Brown's answer was no. Not if Iran has external support from China and Russia, not if they are willing to accept economic collapse in exchange for resistance, not if their nuclear program is further along than intelligence assessments predicted. Why did Iran do this? Moshtaba Khamenei is not his father. Ali Khamenei spent decades balancing different factions. He negotiated, he compromised, he played a long game. Moshtaba does not have that luxury. He was installed by the military. The IRGC put him in power. They expect him to deliver results. Sources say the message was clear: we made you Supreme Leader. You will give us what we want. What they want is the complete removal of American influence from the region, the economic resources to rebuild Iran's military, and the international legitimacy that comes from forcing the United States to negotiate as an equal. For 4 decades, the United States dictated terms to Iran. Now they have leverage. 7 American soldiers dead, oil at $121, a leaked Pentagon document saying the war is unwinnable, China and Russia backing Iran's position, the Strait of Hormuz as a loaded gun pointed at the global economy. Moshtaba Khamenei is not begging for negotiations. He is demanding surrender. If the United States accepts negotiations on Iran's terms, it will be remembered as the end of American dominance in the Middle East. If the United States rejects negotiations and the war continues, it will be remembered as the beginning of an unwinnable conflict. This is a fundamental restructuring of global power. When a regional power backed by global superpowers can make demands of the United States and the United States has no good options, that signals the end of an era. China sees an opportunity to position itself as the broker of Middle East peace. Russia calculates that every American asset committed to the Middle East is unavailable for Europe or Asia. Britain issued a carefully worded statement calling for de-escalation. France called for diplomatic engagement. Germany warned of catastrophic economic consequences. None backed the American position unconditionally. They see the same intelligence assessments. They know this war has no military solution. A divided Western alliance cannot pressure Iran effectively. Reports describe a president who is isolated and angry, obsessing over the leaked Pentagon document, demanding to know who is responsible. He keeps asking why Iran is still fighting if we destroyed their infrastructure. He is experiencing the reality gap between what he was promised and what has actually been achieved. Staff are limiting his media exposure, controlling access, trying to prevent statements that box the administration into unsustainable positions. The oil price spike is real pain hitting American consumers. Gas prices up 60 cents per gallon in 10 days. Airlines announcing fare increases. Shipping costs surging. Inflation spiking again. The Federal Reserve is trapped. Raise rates and crash the economy, or hold steady and watch prices explode. So where are we now? Khamenei has delivered an ultimatum: withdraw, lift sanctions, pay reparations or face closure of the Strait of Hormuz, Chinese and Russian military support, and an Iranian nuclear weapon. The Pentagon has concluded the war is unwinnable. The president has gone silent. Oil is at $121. China and Russia are backing Iran. European allies are hedging. The clock is ticking on a 30-day deadline with no strategy to address it. The administration wanted to project strength. They revealed weakness instead. You cannot spin the Pentagon's classified assessment. You cannot spin oil prices. You cannot spin the fact that Iran is making demands and the United States has no response. Reality asserts itself. Killing one leader did not end the Iranian government. It created a more radical successor. Airstrikes did not break Iran's will, they hardened it. American military power cannot solve every problem. Some conflicts have no military solution. Expect desperate attempts to find a face-saving exit. The administration will claim negotiations were always part of the plan. They will redefine victory. They will spin withdrawal as strategic repositioning. But Iran forced the United States to the negotiating table by surviving the initial assault and making demands backed by credible threats. When a regional power can do that to a global superpower, the balance has shifted. When that shift happens publicly with the world watching, there is no going back. Subscribe now. We will monitor the Swiss back-channel communications happening right now. If the administration makes any statement in the next 48 hours, we will break down what the language reveals. When the 30-day deadline approaches, we will track every move Iran makes toward the Strait of Hormuz. This is history happening in real time. The decisions made in the next 72 hours will define American foreign policy for the next decade. Stay with this channel. Turn on notifications. When the White House breaks its silence, when Iran makes its next move, when economic pressure becomes unbearable, I will be here covering every document, every statement, every development as it happens. This is the moment American power met a challenge it cannot overcome with force alone. Watch very closely.